Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. Today I'm going to be talking about PulseChain, why I believe that this is going to be one of the top performing layer ones this cycle that could go up 100x from our entries today, and most importantly, how to actually go about bridging and buying into this ecosystem. So many people have been asking me to make a video talking about how to actually buy PulseChain. Today I'm going to break it all down. We're going to talk about the core tokens, why I think that they're going to outperform so much, talk about some of the fundamentals behind the reasons why they're going to do so well, and then finish up by actually teaching you guys a step-by-step process for how to go about purchasing these tokens. I have a lot of confidence that this is going to be a premier layer one and you're not going to want to miss out on it. So stay all the way to the end because this is going to be packed full of a lot of information you're not going to want to miss out with. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you find any value in this video, please do me a favor. Hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. Without further ado, let's jump right into this amazing video today. So most of your guys' introduction to the Richard Hart ecosystem would probably be through Hex in the last cycle. Now, Hex in the last cycle was touted as the biggest scam. You should never touch it, any of that. However, it ended up being the best performing asset in the last cycle, right behind Shiba Inu. And it literally went up 10,000x and was right behind Ethereum as far as the top three stance in crypto. Most people don't realize that it hit that high of a market cap in the last cycle. So I missed out on it. I was one of the haters of Richard Hart, all of that stuff. And ultimately, I'm salty that I missed out on it because why wouldn't you want to buy the best performing asset over the last cycle? Of course, everybody wants to do that. That's everybody's dreams. However, almost nobody ends up doing it because of these random beliefs about the market. You know, everybody talked crap on Hex. It was the best thing to talk crap about. And then it ended up outperforming everything. So, in my opinion, nothing matters besides me making the most money possible in the market. If I wasn't here for that reason, there should be no reason why I was here at all. That's my only goal with crypto, is just to make as much money possible. So with that being said, you know, when we're talking about this, why wouldn't we invest into the coins that have that potentiality of outperforming? With Hex, it outperformed everything, you know, and then it had this massive dump. But truthfully, before PulseChain went live and it got, you know, basically forked and there ended up being two different versions of Hex, Hex was following the exact same trends that all of the other top markets were. And at the beginning of this cycle in 2023, it actually ended up outperforming a lot of stuff. In my opinion, if they wouldn't have forked Hex and actually made another version on PulseChain, I don't think we would have had this dump because this whole entire lower low was created just because of all of the original Hex OGs dumping all of their Hex and putting it all into P-Hex on PulseChain when that went live. So that was what created this big lower low. Because of that, everybody's forgotten about E-Hex. They don't care about it. But my point is this. Richard Hart has proven that he knows how to create a token that can outperform the rest of the market. Even when it's not listed on centralized exchanges, it's not available for most people to be able to trade. You have to actually go on-chain to be able to do it. He still made a top 3 crypto all in one cycle. He did that all in one cycle. So with that being said, I'm open-minded to the potential where maybe he can do it again. Now he has an entire layer 1. He's got a layer 1, he's got a DEX, he's got, you know, P-Hex, which was forked and duplicated onto PulseChain. That one can still pump really hard because all of the people that staked for 10 and 15 years in the last cycle, they just got their stakes duplicated on PulseChain. So they're still locked in. They still can't sell anything. All of the same fundamental reasons that the token went up so high all still exist today. So not only does he still have Hex, but he's also got incentive token, which is the farming token. There's 4 tokens that he has in the ecosystem where he has all of the same kind of tokenomics at play, that the supply is very minimal. He controls most of the supply, so most people aren't going to be able to have a big, you know, piece to be able to buy from in the liquidity pools. And because of that, it doesn't take very much buy pressure to come into these markets, and the prices of the assets can go up substantially. So that's really the selling point with PulseChain. Now, the whole reason I'm bullish on it is really coming down to this. The 5th biggest Ethereum holder is literally the PulseChain sacrifice wallet, aka Richard Hart. And that's not counting all of the other money that he raised for Hex in the last cycle in Bitcoin and ETH. So the dude's got infinite amounts of Ethereum and Bitcoin. However, if we're just looking at the PulseChain sacrifice wallet, it's speculated that he's going to be injecting all of this into the liquidity pools of his tokens, where he already controls the majority of the supply. So when he starts inputting just a small amount of this Ethereum, as Ethereum's going upwards of, $13,000, $20,000 this cycle, which I believe is going to happen, it doesn't take very much of that Ethereum to come into his markets, and we can see the values of all of his assets go up 100x. Same ways that happened to Hex in the last cycle. So, guys, you got to look past the Richard Hart hate. The guy's annoying. I agree. He's obnoxious. He's a narcissist. He wants to be worshipped. It's really weird. Like, I think that we can all get behind that. The guy's kind of weird. He's kind of a corny dude. However, he is smart, and he does know what he's doing when he's creating tokens that pump. And to be fair, that's the only thing I care about. I don't care if you are the weirdest person in the world. Everybody thinks you're silly. You have pink hair, and, whatever it is. You're just a weird dude, right? I don't care if you're going to create something that's going to make me a lot of money. I will invest into it. So you could be as weird as you want to be. I'm going to continue to invest into you, because it's usually like, the autistic people that are kind of weird that end up making these sort of really valuable things. So we got to look past some of that stuff. We got to understand things from face value and understand that he's got this much Ethereum to inject into his tokens and watch the values of them skyrocket substantially. If we come over here, I've always told you guys that the Pulse chart looks like the XRP chart from its first cycle, and I've continued to maintain the same belief. We are looking at the exact same fractal playing out, and I'm telling you, the same ways that when XRP started running and went straight to its all-time high in one big breakout, came right back down onto support of this lower high before it mooned, PulseChain's going to do the same thing. It's going to rocket to its all-time high. It's going to pull back onto this supportive wave B, and then it's really going to start skyrocketing into a new all-time high and do the same fractal that all of these altcoins do. The same fractal that Hex did in the last cycle. He controls the supply. It doesn't take very much of this new liquidity to come into the market to see them go up substantially. All of the same tokenomics are at play here. The difference is he has a DEX to make it all work. This is PulseX. This is the DEX token on PulseChain, and the way that this works is it's literally just a fork of pancake swap. So it's simple. The way liquidity works on PulseChain, and the whole reason why it's so important that he has all of this ETH to inject into his liquidity pools, it comes down to PulseX and the way that the math works. If we look at PulseX, let's say that there is $1 million of PulseX on this side of the liquidity pool. So this is 1 mil, and now remember, there's always another side of a token inside of the liquidity pool. Let's say, just to make it simple, there is 1 mil, but this is Pulse. PLS. This is his other token. So because of the fact that the liquidity works in a square and it's basic math, we can calculate this. If one side of the liquidity pool doubles in value, the other token will 4x in price to keep the balance inside of the liquidity pool. So basically, if he comes in and puts $1 million worth of PulseX tokens on this side and doubles the liquidity pool, so instead of 1 mil, it's 2 mil. So 2 mil liquidity against 1 mil on the Pulse side. The Pulse token now has to do a 4x in price to just get back to a balancing ratio inside of the liquidity pool. So that's the value of PulseChain, guys. All of these tokens are bonded to each other, right? They're all bonded in liquidity. So if one of their liquidity pools doubles in value, it's going to make all of the other tokens go up in value as well. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly 4x. It's not like the liquidity pool always has to double. It could maybe only go up like 25%. But regardless, it's basically working in the same sort of relationship where we can calculate the values of these tokens just based off of how much liquidity is coming into the pools. So when we speculate on the idea that Richard Hart is going to be injecting this Ethereum into his own liquidity pools and driving up the values of his tokens, it's not a pipe dream because he's talked about this and he's already done it on a small scale. When we actually look at the PulseX chart, notice how this big pump happened in here, right there. And if we look at the Pulse chart, that same pump happened, but it wasn't quite as big. It was actually just a bigger wick to the upside. The reason why that ended up happening was because he was swapping Pulse and PulseX between each other, and that's what caused this price to actually outperform on the PulseX side. He swapped one for the other, put all of it inside of one of the liquidity pools, and then it caused the price of his asset to actually go up a lot. So he understands how to manipulate the values of his own tokens, whether he's swapping one for the other, doubling one side of the liquidity pool versus the other, or whether he's actually injecting Ethereum into these liquidity pools. It doesn't change anything. All of these are tools that he's going to be able to use to drive up the values. And he's already talked about this, and he's already done it on a small scale. So it's not even like this is speculation. Like, this is what is going to happen. And in my opinion, if it doesn't happen, there is no selling point with PulseChain. It's truthfully the only reason I've invested money in over here. I think it is a little higher risk, so just be aware of that. But keep in mind, guys, that with his track record with Hex, and with what he's created on the PulseX DEX and PulseChain, how they're all liquidity bonded, how the price moves in a square, basic math we can calculate, and then he owns all of this Ethereum he can inject into these liquidity pools, we know what Ethereum is going to do. So when he starts injecting hundreds of millions of dollars into these tokens, the idea that they go up 100x is not a pipe dream at all. In fact, it's likely that that's what's going to happen. So there is so much money to be made over here, guys. And I can go into more detail around the tokens. You know, there's Hex. This is the forked version, the duplicated version. I still think that this one's going to pump really hard. And it makes sense that he would want to resurrect Hex, make it another top crypto in the market, so that he can have all of this publicity, this glory he talks about. He wants to be worshipped. The guy's a little bit thrown off. It's all right, though. He knows how to make pumping markets, and that's the thing I can look past, guys. So many people are going to stop at Richard Hart and say, this guy's a scammer, I want nothing to do with him. I was the same person for a long time. However, what changed for me was that when I realized that he's created something that's going to make me a lot of money. So I don't care. Be as weird as you want. Be as outlandish. You know, go be worshipped. I don't care. Make me the money and I can go and do my own thing. That's all I care about. Really, it really is. So when he has all of these tokens, and we're talking about the ideas of them being bonded together in the same liquidity, he injects a small amount of capital into these, you're going to see the values of these things explode in the most tremendous fashion that you could ever even thought possible. When we're looking at Pulse, and we're looking at XRP, this is literally what is going to happen. So you can believe me, you can doubt me. The people that believe me, the next portion of this video is me actually teaching you how to buy these tokens. I've talked so much about why I think they're going to pump so hard, you know, all of the ETH that Richard Hart controls, the way that the liquidity giving works on PulseX, all of that stuff. I've talked about it a number of times. Now I'm going to break down how to actually go about buying these tokens if you guys do want to buy them, how to get bridged over, how to make sure that you're set up in the proper ways before all of this price appreciation takes place. So we're already 12 and a half minutes in. It's going to be a long video. You guys are just going to have to bear with me on that. However, if we come over here to the PulseChain.com official website, I will link everything in the description so you can find it. You're going to be able to get mostly everything of what you need from right here. And I'm going to kind of break down some things to just be aware of. You know, when you're using PulseChain, it can be a little confusing because it is a little archaic. There's not really a plentiful amount of block explorers. You know, sometimes your transactions get stuck in the bridge for a long time, unexplained reasons, nobody knows. There is a little bit of kind of, I would say, a lacking infrastructure over here. But with that being said, I've still traded on it a number of times, and it's not really any different than kind of early Ethereum in DeFi summer. It's just kind of a basic chain. You know, it's literally just a fork of Ethereum, so it's not like it has anything special. And then it's actually lacking in a lot of the features that Ethereum has. So it's lesser than Ethereum. You're going to have issues with that, but be aware that it's not really like I've ran into too many issues with it. The Block Explorer is about the only real issue that I have with PulseChain. You know, that's aside from the point. There still is Block Explorers that exist. They just don't work that great. So that's my only gripe really against PulseChain. Be aware of that. But if we come over to this website, you know, right off the bat, there's a few wallets that you can actually use. If you come over here and click more details, it's going to pull all of this down. And this is going to give you all of the information to actually type this into your MetaMask wallet. If you want to add the chain, you're going to have to manually input all of these things. But it's super easy. You just copy and paste all of these into the section that it tells you inside of your wallet. And you can use Brave Wallet, Magic Internet Wallet, which is the official wallet of PulseChain. I always just use MetaMask personally. So if you guys use MetaMask, rock with that. I don't know anything about Internet Money Wallet. However, I do actually believe that it's a solid wallet and would probably work the best inside of PulseChain. So if you want kind of a PulseChain centric wallet, that's probably the one I'd go for. However, I always use MetaMask. It's easier for me to just keep all of my token MetaMask. So that's the one I personally go for. Now, if you guys want to actually buy Pulse, you're going to have Pulse to actually be able to swap and trade on PulseX because that's the gas token, same way that Ethereum works, right? So if you're going to be wondering how to actually go about buying Pulse, there's a couple different ways that you can go. Now, if you click the buy today button, it's going to direct you to a couple different options. Now, the first important thing, in my opinion, is whether you're going to want to bridge over to this network or whether you're going to want to actually go ahead and deposit some money, because there's a couple options. If you guys want to actually create an account, you can actually use your bank to purchase some of these assets. You know, whether you're using the on-ramp or off-ramp, you can actually do both, and that's going to be OX Coast. So I'm going to link this in the description. You're going to have to create an account, but you can connect your bank account, and you can actually have a way to accumulate some of these assets through your bank. So that's at least an option on PulseChain. But if you're wanting just a simple option, you already have, you know, money primed inside of a wallet, what you can actually do is just come over to libertyswap.finance, and they're going to be able to exchange you from stable coins on another chain into Pulse asset. So in this case, if you came over here, you could use Base, Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, Arbitrum, PulseChain, Solana. There's all of these different US dollar options. Same thing with USDT. You can use Base, or not Base, Binance Smart Chain and Ethereum. And then with DI, they only have Ethereum. But with USDC, you have a number of different chains that you can use, and you just pick one. In this case, it just says Ethereum, but then you can actually go ahead and swap into some of these PulseChain assets. So obviously pick PulseChain because you need gas over here. But if you just come over here and do that, you can swap any chain for the most part, all the main ones pretty much. You can swap those for PulseChain. And then, you know, you're just going to follow through with this swap in the same ways that you would use any sort of DEX. So I'm going to link Liberty Swap. I think that this is probably the easiest way for most people to get money over here. If you don't have any money on these other chains, you never really have traded on these other chains, then yeah, I mean, you could actually go about using OX Coast over here. I will also link that. You could use your bank account. I don't know enough about this one, so I haven't used it, none of that. But I think that Liberty Swap is a good option if you already have some of this money on some of these other chains. So you're going to need Pulse. I would probably use Liberty Swap to do that. But, you know, another option, if you're trying to swap for tokens, once you actually have your Pulse over on PulseChain, you know, Petius is a really good DEX. It's basically a 1-inch fork, so it's an aggregator. It sources all of the liquidity pools on PulseChain and gives you the best rate. So Petius is a really good option. It's probably the one I'd go with. And then these are the different wallet options that you can actually use over here. But, you know, the best way that your guys are going to be able to bridge, the easiest way, you can use the PulseChain bridge. Honestly, the PulseChain bridge sucks. It's confusing. You know, I remember the first time me using it, it took a long time as well. It reminded me of using Bitcoin back in the early day of like 2016, how you would send your money and you just didn't know where it was for a long time. I had the same issues with the PulseChain bridge. So at the end of the day, it's ultimately just the UI that's kind of crappy. The bridge does kind of suck as well, but keep in mind that they're still using all of the same stuff. It's just that the UI is a little bit different from Liberty Swap. You know, like I said, they have a bridge across a number of different networks, so I would just use them. It would be a little easier, but there is the native PulseChain bridge as well. You know, that's always an option that you can use, and you can find everything from this website right here. If you want to add it to your wallet, if you want to buy PulseChain through OX Coast, Ramp Now, if you want to actually bridge, you can use the Liberty Swap page right here. All of these are really great options. Now, for the last one, if you do need a block explorer, otter.pulsechain.com is the best block explorer. And when you look at this, you're probably sitting here thinking, what in the hell? And that's exactly what I think as well. Like I said, it's the only issue with PulseChain. I don't know why he won't just put a little bit of that money into building an actual working block explorer, because they do really suck when you're trying to track transactions. It's not anything like Etherscan. So be aware of that. That's really the only disadvantage when using PulseChain, but I have used Otter, and it actually does work, so that's just something to be aware of. But like I said, guys, I'm going to link the main website in the description so you guys can find everything here. This is all super simple stuff, you know, whether you want to bridge, whether you want to add the network into your PulseChain wallet, or whether you want to actually trade on PulseX. You know, PulseX is the native DEX, but for me personally, I like to use Petius. That's just the one that I've always kind of used since I came over here. I've never had any issues with using it, and it always gives you the best rate, so I like that personally. But if you're looking for a bridge, you could use the native bridge. Once again, I don't like the native bridge. I would personally just go over here with Liberty Swap, and while you're waiting, you can kind of play with these cool colors. Yeah, I think it's a really good platform. So personally, I would be using these. You can swap them across a number of different chains. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover for today's video. Like I said, I'm really, really bullish on the Richard Hart tokens. I'm personally the most bullish on PulseChain. I think it's going to do what XRP did in its 2017 cycle. So with that being said, you know, we have a rare opportunity of being able to accumulate some of these right before this explosion takes place, right before Richard starts dumping all of this Ethereum into his own liquidity pools. You're going to see an absolutely tremendous bull market over here. So I wanted to give you guys all the details on how to actually come over here and bridge, how to actually buy, how to swap, how to trade, all of that stuff. It's all very simple and easy to follow if you just look at the website. And then if you go through the website, I would personally just use Liberty Swap to do the bridging and the swapping. You know, it's a little bit easier that way. If you want to actually use a true DEX to swap, Piteus is the best option. I've used it the most. So guys, with that being said, links are in the description to find literally all of this stuff. And with that being said, I will catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.